we focus on educating, empowering, and inspiring people of African descent throughout the diaspora and around the world, because right now it's corrects wrong behavior. What you do for yourself, what you do to yourself, and what you allow other people to do to you and get away with is based upon what you think about yourself. What you think about yourself is based upon what you have been taught about yourself. What you've been taught about yourself is based upon everything you've read, heard, and seen about yourself. So when you control the radius of a man's thoughts, you can control the circumference of his actions, because the mind can't do or teach what it doesn't know. Now, we deal with a number of different topics here on the African History Network show. We deal with current events, history, politics, education, economic empowerment, entrepreneurship, relationships, love, sex, health issues, and much, much more. Sign up for our email newsletter. Text the word Kemet, K-E-M-E-T. Text the word Kemet, K-E-M-E-T, to 22828 to sign up for our email newsletter. Also, visit our website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. You sign up for our email newsletter there as well. All right, so we're broadcasting on our social media platforms, on our YouTube channel, Michael Imhotep, I-M-H-O-T-E-P. Also, my Facebook fan page, The African History Network, The African History Network. We know that there was a controversy this past, what are the number of controversies? Now, okay, two controversies. One, that was one of many this past week. So Minister Farrakhan did a 4th of July broadcast. It was aired on Revolt TV. It was also live streamed. We shared the live broadcast on our Facebook fan page, The African History Network. So you can check it out there. You also go to revolt.tv, revolt.tv. They aired it there. Okay, I'm going to go back and watch this in its entirety. It's some interesting, some few historical inaccuracies that I caught, but we'll go back and listen to the entire thing. Another civil war broke out this past week on social media, and had to do with Cass Technical High School. I was debating about whether to talk about this, debating about how much time I actually wanted to devote to this, but what the hell? So Governor Gretchen Whitmer, and I'm going to pull up the article. Governor Gretchen Whitmer renamed a building here in the state of Michigan, and it was named after Lewis Cass. Okay, now Lewis Cass is who Cass Technical High School is named after. All right. Now, some people may not like me talking about this on the radio. Well, I really don't care. Number one, I'm a graduate of Cass Technical High School. 2, I'm a historian. 3, I'm wondering what the hell is wrong with Negroes. Okay. So let's look at this. Then we're getting to Colin Kaepernick, but this is extremely important. So Governor Whitmer renamed this building, and I'm going to pull up this article here. I posted a number of articles, and my friend Jamon Jordan, who's a fellow historian, he posted a lot of information about this. And this boils down to how you have some people, including those who are alumni of Cass Tech, who say it's time for the name of Cass Technical High School to be changed. Because Cass Technical High School is named after Lewis Cass, who one was a slave owner. Now, some people make the argument, well, he only owned one slave, but he was a Secretary of War for one of the biggest white supremacist presidents in history, not Donald Trump, but President Andrew Jackson, who Donald Trump idolizes. Imagine that. And not only that, but he helped to initiate the Indian Removal Act of 1830. He helped to initiate carry out the Indian Removal Act of 1830. Now, the Indian Removal Act of 1830 was signed by President Andrew Jackson. And what it did was it pushed the Choctaw, Chickasaw, Creek, Cherokee, and Seminole Indians off their land in southeastern United States, forced them to go over 1,000 miles into Oklahoma on what was known as the Trail of Tears. Y'all probably learned about this in school, especially with the Cass Tech. I'm sure you teachers taught us this, right? I ain't like history in school. Okay. But I remember about the Trail of Tears. Now I don't remember them saying Lewis Cass helped carry this out, and this is who the school named after. And this is a institution of Black excellence named after this white supremacist. Okay. So, um, so people going back and forth on social media, and you got people saying, "Oh, we don't associate we don't associate the name Cass Tech with the Lewis Cass." I'm like, you, um, okay. So people are going back and forth with this. Jamon is posting historical information, posting articles, and I posted information in our Cass Tech group for the year I graduated, things like this, right? And one of the articles that I posted, let me grab it right here. I put a caption in it. One of the things that I said is that people who are free. Oh, let's look at this. Here's exactly what I said. Too many of us operate out of a European cultural paradigm, and success and prestige is judged by a closer proximity to white supremacy. So if the name of Lewis Cass Technical High School is changed to Ida B. Wells, Benjamin Banneker, or Coleman A. Young, that wipes out your fond memories at the school, because a lot of people saying they have fond memories associated with Cass Tech, things like that. Okay, it's the school. You know, people who are free and operate based upon their history and their own cultural paradigm don't name their institutions after their oppressors. They don't name their institutions after people who worked to keep their ancestors enslaved. They name their institutions after people who fought for their freedom, not people who worked against their freedom. Jews are not going to name institutions after Adolf Hitler or any Nazis. Native Americans in general, the ones that have been able to maintain their culture, they ain't gonna name their institutions after Custard or after Andrew Jackson, things like this. These people who worked in opposition to them. They're not going to name any, they're not going to, Native Americans are not going to name their institutions after Anthony Wayne. Also known as Mad Anthony Wayne. Because Mad Anthony Wayne was an Indian killer. Mad Anthony Wayne is who Wayne State University is named after. They need to change that too. I graduated from Wayne State also. I learned that back in the early 90s when I was at Wayne State. Go to Britannia. I posted this article for, this was a hell of a week. Oh, this was a hell of a week. I'm telling you. A civil war broke out on social media. Go to Britannica.com. Okay. Go to Britannica.com and search for Anthony Wayne. And I'll pull up the article. Let me see here. Because here we go. Yeah. See, you got to research these white people that these institutions are named after. I'm serious. Because oftentimes Europeans honor their mass murderers. I'm not saying all the time. I mean, you just saw Trump talking about preserving statues of Christopher Columbus. Columbus is one of the biggest, one of the people who brought one of the largest genocides in history to indigenous people and African people. And what's interesting is Columbus never came to this land we call the United States of America. I don't know how many people actually know this. The closest Columbus came here is Cuba, which is 90 miles away. So while there was I think the bust is still there. Now let me just say this from the start. From the beginning, you've heard me say this before. I've said it over and over and over again. I'm totally against defacing these statues, defacing Confederate monuments, defacing Columbus statues. I'm totally against people taking it upon themselves to destroy and take down these statues. I'm totally against that. Because I'm telling you, if they do that to a statue of Octavius Cato in Philadelphia, or to the new statue of Rosa Parks in Montgomery, Alabama, or any of these other statues honoring African-American heroes, people are going to be really pissed. I'm saying, well, wait a second, hold on now. Well, okay, now I understand Confederate, quote unquote Confederate heroes committed treason and stuff like that, but I'm saying, wait a second. I'm for the city council, the governor, I'm for them to be properly taken down and put in museums. I don't call for them to be destroyed. All those statues, they should be preserved and put in museums, because that history has to be taught. That history is not being taught, which is one of the reasons why you had this chaos now, because people are ignorant of history. So I'm totally against it. Even Andrew Jackson, as big as a racist, white supremacist he was, I'm totally against those statues being destroyed and people just taking upon themselves to take that down, because what stops white supremacists from attacking our statues and taking them down? Oh, Rosa Parks broke the law when she refused to give up her seat on the bus. So see, people don't understand how this stuff cuts both ways. Now, with that being said, if we look at Anthony Wayne, how much time? Okay, let's see where we are coming up on a break. And why isn't this going forward? Hold on. If we go to Britannica.com and look at search for Anthony Wayne, right? So Anthony Wayne was the Anthony Wayne's who Wayne State University is named after. Let's see, look at article. Why isn't this coming up? I'm going to have to pull this up somewhere else. Hold on. Just a minute here. Okay, I'll have to pull this up on another computer. We'll come back to Anthony Wayne. So let me go here with this. We're talking about Cass Tech because they're connected. Okay, Cass Tech and Anthony Wayne are connected. A lot of times, African Americans have been taught to honor these European heroes that worked against our ancestors and worked to keep us in bondage or keep us oppressed. So I go on to say in this post, because WXYZ.com Channel 7 had this article, Cass Tech doesn't plan on changing its name. Okay. So I go on to, so I say too many of us operate out of a European cultural paradigm, and success and prestige is judged by closer proximity to white supremacy. So if the name of Lewis Cass Technical High School is changed to Ida B. Wells, Benjamin Banneker, or Coleman A. Young, that wipes out your fond memories at the school. You would rather have the school named after a white supremacist who worked to oppress us and Native Americans than one of our ancestors who worked to free us? I said, what kind of Black excellence is that? Because when I was at Cass Tech, we were taught to be leaders. We were taught African-American excellence, Black excellence, and taught to be trailblazers and all this stuff. Right? Okay. Well, I mean, what happened? What happened to that? I said, this is an example of what happens when people don't understand history and will rather honor their oppressors as opposed to their own ancestors. We need new people on the school board, because one of the school board members graduated from Cass. I'm not going to call her name. But one of them said she didn't want to change the name and all this. So this all sorry sob story, all this nonsense. And unfortunately, you know, a lot of us suffer. I'm not calling any names. I really am not. But a lot of us suffer from this type of dedicated ignorance. And there's a lot of people who mean well and things like this, but I'm like, you know, name Cass Tech should have been changed like 30, 40 years ago. When it's predominantly African-American and we were in control, we should change the name then. It's 2020. We're still debating about changing the name? Really? I said, we need new people on the school board who are culturally conscious and understand that people who are free don't name institutions after their former slave masters and those who fought to keep them enslaved. It's like, we got to have a debate about this. Just last year, we commemorated 1619. It's like, we really got to have a debate about this? Oh, okay. That's what you want to do. So I was looking at some of the comments this past week. Oh my God. Let me see. Fox 2 News had the article, urge to rename Cass Tech heats up. Lewis Cass was slave owner and helped cause Trail of Tears. Now, if you African American and had Native American ancestry like me, because I had Cherokee on my mother's side of the family, because my mother's family is from Tennessee, The Cherokee were pushed off their land. Now, I forgot to tell you, 1/3 of the people who were on the Trail of Tears were the African slaves that the Native Americans owned, the Choctaw, Chickasaw, Creek, Cherokee, and Seminole Indians. Right? Now, we do know, so this ties also into Joe Biden saying that he was for reparations for African Americans as well as Native Americans. You had some people on social media saying, well, they were Native Americans owned slaves. Okay, well, we know that. But the majority of them did not. I mean, there were about 566 federally recognized tribal nations. We know the majority of them didn't. That's not excusing the ones who did. But about 98, 99% of enslaved Africans were owned by white people. Now, if you want to really go there and bring this up, a lot of people don't want to deal with this part of the history. Well, they may go outside the circumference of some people's awareness. Just because you disagree with it or don't like it does not mean it's not true. It just means you have to do some research to understand what the hell I'm talking about. There were some African Americans that owned slaves also. Now, because there were African Americans that owned slaves, does that mean that African Americans in general don't deserve reparations? See, you got to be careful because this cuts both ways. I'm trying to explain this to you. This cuts both ways. So if you read Dr. Henry Louis Gates Jr. did a good article, and I disagree with him on some things, but he does do some good research. I read dozens of his articles. There was an article that he wrote for theroot.com a few years ago, because he did this whole series, 100 Amazing Facts About the Negro, okay? And we're coming up on a break in about 17 minutes, I think, something like that. 100 Amazing Facts About the Negro. So what he did was each week for The Root, and I'm not a big fan of The Root, y'all know that, but they do have some good articles here and there. J.A. Rogers came out with the pamphlet, 100 Amazing Facts About the Negro. And what Gates did was each week he would analyze, research that fact, and add additional research, additional information, update the research if needed. And he did an extensive article dealing with did African Americans own slaves? And they looked at, I think it was about 1850 or so, and about 1% of the slaves in America, something like that, were owned by African Americans. But when you study it, about 50% of the slaves they owned were family members they bought out of slavery. Because there's a very nuanced history. It's a very nuanced history. You had cases where you have one person who's free married to somebody enslaved. That happened to a woman named Araminta Ross, who became known as Harriet Tubman. Her husband, John Tubman, was free. She was enslaved. So you have a very nuanced history. A lot of times people really try to simplify history. The history is not simple. It's not at all. Depending upon the region you're talking about, depending upon the time period you're talking about, what laws were in place, all the states didn't have all the same laws, and states start getting rid of slavery at different times. 1787, when the Constitution was signed, 5 states had already abolished slavery, either abolished it all the way, like Vermont, which abolished it July 1777, or they stopped the international transatlantic slave trade. Okay, or they're on the way to abolishing it, like Pennsylvania, Massachusetts, Pennsylvania, things like this, Connecticut. So you're dealing with a nuanced history. All the states, all the colonies didn't have slavery all at the same time, meaning, you've heard me talk about this before, August 20th, 1619, codified slave laws didn't exist in any of the 13 colonies. That's something that's going to evolve. The first colony to have codified slave laws is Massachusetts in 1641. Those early Africans coming in on the White Line slave ship, they're put into a form of indentured servitude. Okay, child perpetuity and all that stuff, enslaved for perpetuity, all that stuff that didn't exist at that time in the 13 colonies. Okay, now the Spanish colonies are different. With Spanish, the Spanish colony in 1526, we overthrew that. Those Africans ran away. They disappeared with the Native Americans. But you have to, the history of slavery is very, very nuanced history. You can't just generalize it. You have to look at region, period of time, what laws were in place, because this varies. But Gates has an extensive article. Did Black people own slaves? Did Black people own slaves? TheRoot.com, March 4th, 2013. And he talks about one of the most vexing questions in American history is whether free African Americans themselves own slaves. The short answer to the question, as you might suspect, is yes, of course. Some free Black people in this country bought and sold other Black people, and did so at least since 1654, continuing to do so right through the Civil War. For me, the really fascinating questions about Black slave owning are how many Black masters were involved, how many slaves did they own, and why did they own slaves? Okay. And one of the things they talk about in the research, and he cited, if I remember correctly, he cited Dr. Carter G. Woodson, if I remember correctly with this, is that they looked at, let's see, the known world of free Black slave holders. Okay, how many slaves did Blacks own? So what do the actual numbers of Black slave owners and their slaves tell us? In 1830, the year most carefully studied by Dr. Carter G. Woodson. Dr. Carter G. Woodson created Negro History Week in 1926, co-founded the Association for the Study of Negro Life and History in 1915, September 1915. Brilliant historian, brilliant scholar. Okay. In 1830, the year most carefully studied by Dr. Carter G. Woodson, about 13.7%, or 319,599 of the Black population was free. Okay. So in 1830, there were 319,599 African Americans in this country. 13.7% were free. Okay. 1830. Of these that are free, 13.7%, 3,776 free Negroes own 12,907 slaves. Okay. 3,776 free Negroes owned 12,907 slaves out of a total of 2,009,043 slaves owned in the entire United States. So the numbers of slaves owned by African Americans overall was quite small by comparison with the number owned by white people. Okay, so we know the overwhelming majority, damn near 90%, 99%, were owned by white people. But you did have some African Americans that owned slaves. The overwhelming majority of slaves were owned by white people. You did have some Native Americans that owned slaves. Let's see here. In his essay, The Known World of Free Black Slaveholders, Thomas J. Presley, using Dr. Woodson's statistics, calculated that 54%, or about 1% of these Black slave owners in 1830 owned between 20 and 84 slaves. 172, or about 4%, owned between 10 to 19 slaves, and 3,050 out of about 94% each owned between 1 and 9 slaves. Crucially, 42% owned just one slave. So 42% in 1830, 42% of African American slave owners owned one slave. Most likely it was a family member. Thomas J. Presley also shows that the percentage of free Black slave owners as the total number of free Black heads of families was quite high in several states, namely 43% in South Carolina, 40% in Louisiana, 26% in Mississippi, 25% in Alabama, and 20% in Georgia. So why did these free Black people own these slaves? It is reasonable to assume that the 42% of the free Black slave owners who owned just one slave probably owned a family member to protect that person, as did many of the other Black slave owners who owned only slightly larger numbers of slaves. As Dr. Carter G. Woodson put it in the 1924 Free Negro Owners of Slaves in the United States in 1830, quote, the census records show that the majority of the Negro owners of slaves were such from the point of view of philanthropy. In many instances, the husband purchased the wife or vice versa. Slaves of Negroes were in some cases the children of a free father who had purchased his wife. If he did not thereafter emancipate the mother, and so many such husbands failed to do so, his own children were born his slaves and were thus reported to the numerators, end quote. It goes on to say, moreover, Dr. Carter G. Woodson explains, benevolent Negroes often purchase slaves to make their lot easier by granting them their freedom for a nominal sum, or by permitting them to work it out on liberal terms. In other words, these Black slave owners, the clear majority, cleverly used the system of slavery to protect their loved ones. Now read this article, because this is an extensive article that Gates did. And like I said, I disagree with him on some things, but I always say he does some good work, because I read dozens of his articles. I have a couple of his books also. All right. Did Black people own slaves? Did Black people own slaves? Dr. Henry Louis Gates Jr. This is from March 4th, 2013 for the root.com. Root really used to have some like really good articles. Some of the other stuff they got now, I don't know what the hell it is, but you know, I ain't one to gossip, so you didn't hear that from me. 313-778-7600 is the call-in number. 313-778-7600 is the call-in number. Call-in number if you have a question or comment. JT, do we have any callers, JT? Okay. 313-778-7600 is the call-in number if you have a question or comment. All right. So I'm going to pull up one of these other articles here dealing with Louis Cass. We'll give you some of the names of them. And let's see, we're coming up on a break here shortly. We'll deal with this on it. We'll continue with that on the other side of the break. Let me jump into this here dealing with Colin Kaepernick. And, you know, just some of the responses from some people, some African Americans supposed to be educated. Now, I always ask the question, educated in what? That's a whole nother show. Like, it was one person that posted, I posted this article about Colin Kaepernick, and Colin Kaepernick Colin Kaepernick denounced 4th of July as a celebration of white supremacy in a Twitter message. You know, some smart ass posted an article of Colin Kaepernick's adopted family, because he's adopted. He was adopted by a white family that taught him to love his brown skin, okay, to love himself. And they posted some idiotic statement. When did Kaepernick realize he was oppressed? Look at his white family. He came from a privileged background, things like this. I responded to this person. They know who their name on the air. I responded very politely to this person. Colin Kaepernick's protest, Colin Kaepernick taking a knee, he ain't taking a knee for himself. He took that knee, his protest was about racism and is about the collective. His protest was about dealing with police brutality towards African Americans and people of color. He specifically said people of color. It wasn't just African Americans. But racism is about the collective, not the individual. So just because he, quote unquote, came from a privileged background, just because he is a multimillionaire, that does not mean, one, he's removed from white supremacy and racism, if you understand what white supremacy and racism is. And if you do not understand European white supremacy and racism, what it is and how it works, everything else that you think that you understand will totally confuse you. So his protest was about the collective. It wasn't about him. It's not about the individual. And oftentimes people make this mistake when they see an athlete, they see an entertainer, say, why are you speaking out about oppression? Why not? They have the 3 F's: fame, fortune, and the following. They have fame, fortune, and the following. When they speak, people listen to them. They have a following, and they have money to put behind their words, put behind their actions. So why wouldn't they do something like this? Do you ask white people you ask white celebrities that support Donald Trump why you support Donald Trump? So to I, I I find it interesting when you have African American celebrities who try to speak up for their people. You got other African Americans who say, well, how can you speak out on oppression? You're wealthy. Racism is a system of advantage and privilege distributed based upon race. Racism occurs when one race of people control the majority of the wealth, power, resources, benefits, privileges, land, access to education, access to opportunity, media, access to health care, etc. And they use that to marginalize, subordinate, and do harm to another race of people. So just because you're a multimillionaire, just because you're an athlete or something, that doesn't mean you don't experience racism, and you don't have to experience racism to speak up about it on behalf of your people and other people who experience it. So too much is given, much is expected. All right. So if we go to this article here dealing with Colin Kaepernick, Colin Kaepernick denounced 4th of July as a celebration of white supremacy in a Twitter message. Ex-footballer Colin Kaepernick, in a message posted on Twitter, denounced 4th of July as a celebration of white supremacy. Black people, he said, black people have been dehumanized, brutalized, criminalized, terrorized by America for centuries, and are expected to join your commemoration of independence, he wrote. Now, he sound like Freddie D. He sound like Frederick Douglass. He said, what to the Negroes your 4th of July? So Kaepernick defied NFL authorities to launch a wave of protests against police brutality in 2016, kneeling while the national anthem played before games. The NFL banned the protest, but has, in the wake of George Floyd demonstration, has backtracked. They came out in the midst. So Roger Goodell did this video, admitted that the NFL was wrong, but he didn't apologize to Colin Kaepernick. He admitted the NFL was wrong on the stance of the protest, taking the knee and all this stuff, but he did not apologize to Colin Kaepernick, which he should. Taking the knee has now become a global gesture of protest against racial injustice. Okay. So in a message posted on Twitter, Colin Kaepernick wrote, quote, black people have been dehumanized, brutalized, criminalized, etc. Now, he shared a video of actor James Earl Jones reciting Frederick Douglass's 1852 speech, "What to the Slave is the 4th of July," over images of America's history of racial brutality, including pictures of slaves and KKK members. Now, the speech by Frederick Douglass, former slave, abolitionist, and orator, questions the hypocrisy of Americans celebrating independence while millions were enslaved on plantations. Okay. James Earl Jones, in his reading of Frederick Douglass' speech, said, quote, fellow citizens, pardon me, allow me to ask, why am I called upon to speak here today? What have I or those I represent to do with your national independence? James Earl Jones went on to say, are the great principles of political freedom and of natural justice embodied in the Declaration of Independence extended to us? This 4th of July is yours, not mine. Now, Colin Kaepernick's reflections on the meaning of Independence Day celebrations follow the most sweeping U.S. protests against racism for generations. Across the country, people have taken to the streets to protest against the killing of George Floyd at the hands of a white police officer and demand action against systemic racism. Okay, now the former San Francisco 49ers player, let me know how much time we have before the break, JT. Okay, we'll continue this on the other side of the break. Listen to the African History Network show right here on 9:10 a.m. the Superstation the Future Radio. I'm Michael Imhotep. We'll be back in a few minutes. All right, stand by, everybody. Computer's freezing up a little bit. Stand by. All right. Also, if you all like this type of information, you could donate to the African History Network, $ the AHN show through Cash App, $ the AHN show through Cash App. Okay, let's continue. How's everybody doing? Stand by. Share this broadcast on your social media platforms. Calling numbers 313-778-7600. 313-778-7600 is the call-in number if you have a question or comment. Stand by. We're back from break in a couple minutes here. Oh, it's been a busy week. I got a training I'm doing on Thursday that I'm getting ready for. Oh, it's been a busy week. It's going to be a busy week also. All right, everybody, stand by. We'll be back from break in a couple minutes here. Follow us on our YouTube channel, Michael Imhotep, IMHOTEP, and my Facebook fan page, The African History Network, The African History Network. Hopefully the lighting is good. Have a new lighting system. This what is this called? Halo Light Pro. Halo Light Pro lighting system here. All right, stand by. So when we come back, I'm going to continue with this article dealing with Colin Kaepernick. And then we'll get into get into some other topics. We're going to talk about the unemployment numbers. Also, the Washington Post had this really good article dealing with Black families pay significantly higher property taxes than white families. Then we'll get some updates on coronavirus as well. Oh, this is freezing up on me. What the heck is this doing? If we stop broadcasting, I'll have to restart this. Welcome back to the African History Network show right here on 910 AM Superstation The Future Radio. I'm your host, Brother Michael Imhotep. It is Sunday, July 5th, 2020, and we are live. Calling numbers 313-778-7600. 313-778-7600 is the call-in number if you have a question or comment. 313-778-7600. Okay. All right. So right before the break, I was sharing this article dealing with Colin Kaepernick, and Colin Kaepernick talking about the 4th of July. And he called it a celebration of white supremacy in a Twitter message. Okay. So we're dealing with some of this history, laying this history out. Okay. And how's everybody doing on watching us on YouTube? Michael Imhotep, IMHOTEP on YouTube. Now, also, if you like this type of information, you could donate to the African History Network, $ the AHN show through Cash App, $ the AHN show through. Okay, here we go. $ the AHN show through Cash App. If you like this type of information, you can also donate $ the AHN show through Cash App or paypal.me/the AHN show through PayPal. Okay, or at our website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. Click on the yellow donate button right on the homepage. And all of my DVD lectures are available at our website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com as well. And some of my online classes and things like that are available at our website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. We have orders shipping out this week. Okay, so let me go back to the article here. This is from Yahoo News, news.yahoo.com, dealing with Colin Kaepernick. And it ties into Frederick Douglass as well. Okay, so he posted a clip of James Earl Jones reciting Frederick Douglass' speech from 1852, what to the slave is the 4th of July, okay? And we've played it before here on the African History Network show. Blackpass.org has the speech there at their website. Also, blackden.com has the speech at their website as well. Okay, I'm waiting for this to load back up. Okay, so we saw that take place this past week. And Then also, history.com had a really good article dealing with 9 things you may not know about the Declaration of Independence. 9 things you may not know about the Declaration of Independence. So read that at history.com. History.com is the official website of the History Channel. And a lot of people don't know it was not signed. The majority of the signers, there were 56 signers of the Declaration of Independence. Most of them did not sign it on July 4th. Okay. On July 1st, 1776, the Second Continental Congress met in Philadelphia. And on the following day, 12 of the 13 colonies voted in favor of Richard Henry Lee's motion for independence. The delegates then spent the next 2 days debating the delegates then spent the next 2 days debating and revising the language of a statement drafted by Thomas Jefferson. On July 4th, Congress officially adopted the Declaration of Independence, and as a result, the date is celebrated as Independence Day. Nearly a month would go by, however, before the actual signing of the document took place first. New York delegates did not officially give their support until July 9th because their home assembly had not yet authorized them to vote in favor of independence. Next, it took 2 weeks for the declaration to be engrossed, written, which means written on parchment in a clear hand. Most of the delegates signed on August 2nd. So you had some of the quote unquote founding fathers who believed Independence Day should be August 2nd, but several signed on a later date. 2 others, John Dickinson and Robert R. Livingston, never signed at all. The signed parchment copy now resides at the National Archives in the Rotunda for the Charters of Freedom, alongside the Constitution and the Bill of Rights. Okay, so they have 9 facts dealing with this, dealing with the dealing with the Declaration of Independence. So check that out, okay, at history.com. All right, let's continue here. So also, speaking of the NFL, you have some NFL fans that are not too happy that the NFL is going to perform Lift Every Voice and Sing during the first week of NFL games. TheGrio.com has a good article.
What have I or those I represent to do with your...
Okay. TheGrio.com has a good article dealing with this. NFL fans threatened boycott over Black National Anthem. NFL fans threatened boycott over Black National Anthem. Now, the NFL once blackballed Colin Kaepernick for his national anthem stand, the article says. Now, after weeks of protests, after deaths of Ahmaud Arbery, George Floyd, and Breonna Taylor, and others, after these protests put race issues on the front burner, they seemingly want to bend over backwards to make amends. First, League Commissioner Roger Goodell responded to a video from several of the league's players asking him to unequivocally support Black Lives Matter. He did this. Let's keep in mind, let's be real. Black people are the product of the NFL. The NFL is like 70% African-American. So they are the product. Okay. Then he said he supports any team that wants to sign Colin Kaepernick, despite the 4 years Colin Kaepernick has been absent from the league. Okay. Now, multiple reports suggest that the league will play Lift Every Voice and Sing, unofficially known as the Black National Anthem, before a preseason game. Predictably, that has some NFL fans upset. Hashtag boycott NFL was trending on Friday, July 3rd. And so you have people posting about this on social media. Hashtag boycott NFL. They don't like the Black National Anthem being played. I'm not sure what. Now, I wonder what percentage of these NFL players who don't like the Black National Anthem being played at an NFL game, I wonder what percent of them support Confederate monuments. Because you have to sit back, and a lot of these are probably Donald Trump supporters. But you have to ask yourself the question, wait a second. Why do you support Confederate monuments honoring traitors to the Union who took up arms against the Union, separated from the Union, and killed members of the Union Army and the Union military? Why do you support monuments honoring them, but you have a problem with Lift Every Voice and Sing being sung at an NFL game and 70% of the players are black? And James Weldon Johnson, who wrote Lift Every Voice and Sing, he wasn't trying to overthrow the government. So when you look at some of these arguments, you have to sit back and wonder, what the hell's wrong with these people? Now, let me see if I can get there, because computer's freezing up. I'm going to try to close some of these tabs out. But Ted Cruz posted on Twitter, Senator Ted Cruz of Texas. He posted on Twitter, he didn't like the idea. He said, how many national anthems are there? Things like this. See, a lot of this is once again, example of what happens when people are ignorant of history. And a lot of this has to do with being culturally insensitive. So as reported by Sports Illustrated, Jacksonville Jaguars wide receiver Chris Conley, who was among the team's players who led a peaceful protest walk through the city, took to Twitter to explain why he approved the league's move to acknowledge the African-American community, and by extension, its black players who make up, according to the article, 75% of the league. Chris Conley said, quote, the league taking the opportunity to play Lift Every Voice and Sing the Black National Anthem is sweet. It's a great way to honor those who started this movement years ago. For those who, so Chris Conley went on to explain on Twitter, for those who aren't familiar with it, the song seeks to remind us of our past as a country and to strive to be better. It speaks to all of us, not just black people, even though it became a rallying cry for African Americans in the Jim Crow era. It is a beautiful message birthed from pain, end quote. So he went on to say, to those claiming the song is divisive, I ask which part? Much like America the Beautiful is played to honor, this song is the same. It isn't for just black people. It's for all who acknowledge the past and press toward a better future. Now, I'm not sure about that second part. When you study the history of Lift Every Voice and Sing, it was written by James Weldon Johnson in 1899. James Weldon Johnson was asked to write he was asked to give a speech on Lincoln's birthday in 1900, the year 1900. So you're going into a new century, and he wrote a poem that started with the words Lift Every Voice and Sing. And basically, when he described what happened, he's basically saying the ancestors, something to the effect that the ancestors were speaking to him, because 1899 was 4 years after Frederick Douglass passes away. Frederick Douglass passes away 1895. You still have former slaves who are alive in 1899. 1899 is also 4 years after the Plessy versus Ferguson U.S. Supreme Court case. Okay, separate but equal. And you're going into a new century with all these hopes and aspirations of achieving real freedom, and African Americans having all of their rights and things like this. So when he described the writing process of it, he basically said something to the effect that the ancestors were speaking to him, and he wrote out their words and their pain, etc., their experiences. We look at Harriet Tubman didn't die in 1913. Booker T. Washington didn't die in 1915. So you have former slaves who were still alive in 1899, 1900. So when I see something like this, right now, some of these very same people who have a problem with Lift Every Voice and Sing being performed, so almost 100% of those people will say what happened to George Floyd was wrong. But what happened to George Floyd was wrong, and he should not have been treated like that. And it's an abomination, all types of stuff like this, right? But then you don't have a problem with the White National Anthem being played at an NFL game, and 70% of the players are Black, or according to this article from the Griot, 75% of the players are Black. You've heard me call it the White National Anthem before. Why do I call it the white? Why do you call it the White National Anthem, Michael Imhotep? Well, who wrote it? It was written September 13th, 1814 by Francis Scott Key. Francis Scott Key was a white supremacist slave owner. When did he write it? During the War of 1812. And a lot of people talk about the third stanza, no refuge for the hireling or the slave. It ain't the third stanza that's the problem. It's the entire song that's the problem. The entire song is a white supremacist song when you actually understand the history of it and who wrote it. And then not only that, so 3 weeks before, so this takes place. Originally, the Star Spangled Banner was called the Defense of Fort McHenry, because this took place in Baltimore, if I remember correctly, Baltimore. The Defense of Fort McHenry, there in Baltimore. The British are attacking this fort. Francis Scott Key is on a ship. Okay, he witnesses the attack from a distance, and the flag was still standing the next morning. All right, so he writes this poem, and it later becomes a song. Music is added to it, becomes a song. It becomes adopted as the White National Anthem. 3 weeks before that, at the Battle of Brandenburg, if I remember correctly, Battle of Brandenburg, Francis Scott Key and his troops got their behinds kicked by the Colonial Marines. The Colonial Marines was a British regiment of former Black slaves, runaway slaves, things like this. And because you had so slavery still going on at this time, 1814, right? This is the United States fighting against Great Britain again, the Great Britain they separated from during the American Revolutionary War, 1775 to 1783. So the British said, the British put the word out, if you come to the slaves still in the US, if you come fight for us, when this is over with, we'll set you free. That's the same thing they said during the American Revolutionary War. So we were born at night, not last night. When you study American Revolutionary War, there were more African people fighting on the side of the British than the colonies. Because the British were the first ones to say, when this war is over with, if you come fight for us, we'll set you free when this war is over. So we wanted to be free. And we fought for our freedom. So at the end of the War of 1812, ends in 1814. The U.S., there were about 6,000 runaway slaves that go fight on the British side. The U.S. demanded that Great Britain return to them their runaway slaves. Great Britain said no. Thankfully, they said no. So when you study the history of this, there's a reason why I call it the White National Anthem. I don't understand why it's performed at the NFL games in the first place. The problem is not Lift Every Voice and Sing being performed the national anthem. The problem is, why the hell are you performing the national anthem at the NFL games? This is not a federal event. This is not U.S. Army versus U.S. Navy. But okay, that's how you want to do it. So let's see what happens with this. Well, first of all, we got to see if there's going to be NFL season at all. because coronavirus is spreading, like hard times. You remember the song Hard Times? Spreading just like the flu. Watch out, homeboy. Don't let it catch you. If we look at the coronavirus update, the 7-day national average, 7-day average case total in the U.S. sets record for 27th straight day. In May, people was talking about people on social media posting pictures of their masks on the ground and saying it's over, all this stuff. I said, you're a damn fool. I said, no, it's not. It ain't over. Local officials in states with surging coronavirus cases issued dire warnings Sunday, July 5th, 2020, about the spread of infections, blaming outbreaks in their communities on early reopenings and saying the virus was rapidly outpacing containment efforts. I thought all this stuff was contained. I thought we had it up against the ropes, like Ali against George Foreman. On the other side of the break, you listen to the African History Network show. We'll continue this. I'm Michael Imhotep. We'll be back in a few minutes. 9:10 a.m. the Superstation. All right, stand by, everybody. Okay, don't have to do that. Stand by, everybody. All right, how's everybody doing? I'm trying to work through these technical issues. All right, everybody on YouTube. Wow, we got a bunch of people on YouTube. What's up? Everybody share this broadcast on your YouTube. Share this on your social media platforms. Let's see, on YouTube, we have, let's start from the W. Canty, Michael Johnson, King Cha 3. Let's go. Let's see what we have. Lawrence, Valerian, Ernest, just a few of the people watching on YouTube. Quasi. All right, let's see where we coming up to next. Stand by, everybody. I gotta pull together this information for the next segment. Nearly happy as job. Stand by. We'll be back from break in a couple of minutes here. All right. Let's see here. Okay, here we go. All right, how's everybody doing? Let's see who else we have here. We got Shawnee B, VC, Jessica. Welcome back to the African History Network show right here on 9:10 a.m. the Superstation, the Future Radio. I'm your host, Brother Michael Imhotep. It is Sunday, July 5th, 2020, and we are live. We're broadcasting on our social media platforms, our Facebook fan page, The African History Network, The African History Network, my YouTube channel, Michael Imhotep, IMHOTEP. And so you can watch us there. We have all these shows archived on my social media platforms, also an audio from Stitcher, iTunes, Castbox, Acast. Search for The African History Network show, The African History Network show. And if you go to our website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com, click on the listen to podcasts. It takes you to our Blog Talk Radio page where we have all about 1,000 podcasts going back to 2010. Okay, I'll be uploading some more this week. Okay, so on YouTube we have VC, we have Jessica, Valerian, Lynn, Shawnee B, Syed, Erie Blackfire, Fly Girl, W. Canty, Demetrius, Mike. Just a few people watching us on our YouTube channel. Okay, so right before the break, we were talking about coronavirus. Coronavirus is spreading out of control. This is by nowhere over. We're at about 2.8 million cases, almost 130,000 deaths. We're on pace to be at by the end of September, we're on pace pretty much to be at about 200,000 deaths. Okay. Just want to warn y'all right now. The other thing important to understand, the Spanish flu pandemic of 1918 lasted 3 years. It's 1918, 1919, 1920. It killed 675,000 Americans. I ain't trying to scare anybody. I'm just saying, you study history so you don't make the same mistakes over and over again. We had an incompetent president then also, who was somewhat incompetent, Woodrow Wilson. So it killed 50 million people worldwide. Well, if you look at the updates from the Washington Post, coronavirus, Washington Post has some really good coronavirus updates. I read it every day, Washington Post as well as New York Times and NBC News. Local officials in states with surging coronavirus cases issued dire warnings Sunday, July 5th, 2020, about the spread of infections, blaming outbreaks in their communities on early reopenings and saying the virus was rapidly outpacing containment efforts. Judge Lina Hidalgo, Democrat, the top elected official in Harris County, Texas, said, "We don't have the room to experiment. We don't have room for incrementalism when we're seeing these kinds of numbers." Now, Harris County, Texas encompasses the sprawling Houston, Texas metro area. Judge Lina Hidalgo went on to say, quote, "Nor should we wait for all the hospital beds to fill and all these people to die before we take drastic action," end quote. And then you look at Donald Trump with his Mount Rushmore event. Most of the people there not wearing masks, not practicing social distancing. He had the Tulsa rally. Same thing there. That was indoors. That's even worse. Outside, a little better, but you still have to practice social distance and wear a mask. Did you hear that Mr. 999 Herman Cain got coronavirus? He went to that Tulsa rally. There's a bunch of Negroes up in there. Hopefully they're all right. Herman Cain remember Herman Cain ran for president, Mr. 999. He had to be hospitalized with coronavirus. Bless his little heart. I hope he's all right. I'm telling you. I'm telling you right now. Coronavirus gonna whip some ass. I'm telling you. So, so part of me, right? Part of me says, I've said this before. Why y'all trying to keep them from going up in there with no mask? Let them going up in there. Yeah, now the CDC warned you about this. Dr. Anthony Fauci warned you about this. You want to go up in there anywhere? Okay. You want to sign a little waiver? Okay. And waive your rights to sue the Trump campaign, or if you get coronavirus, you going up into a super spreader event. You going up into a super spreader event. Okay. So if you get coronavirus, you brought this on yourself. I mean, so the rolling 7-day average for, now some people will say, well, you ain't supposed to say stuff like that. Well, you knew who I was when you tuned into the show. I mean, what do you want me to say? I say, you go, they told you don't go. The local officials are saying don't have the event. They're saying it's going to spread coronavirus. A lot of these places like Tulsa, Oklahoma already had an increase. They're saying, please don't do this. And they do it anyway, and you go up in there. So what the hell do you think was going to happen? No. Okay. Now Trump get tested every day. Now look at this. Look at the hypocrisy. Trump doesn't wear a mask, but he gets tested every day. You got people in Arizona in cars for 9 hours, 6, 7, 8, 9 hours waiting to get a test. In Arizona, they're telling the people when they have the test, you come in your car, you're in line for hours. They're telling the people ahead of time, come with a full tank of gas, come in the car that has air conditioning. you're going to be here for a long time. How is it that Trump doesn't wear a mask, but he gets a coronavirus test every day? This is the same fool who said everybody who wants a test gets a test. He didn't tell you how long you're going to have to wait in line to get a test. Then he's going to be irresponsible and hold an event like this that all the doctors, all the officials are saying is going to spread coronavirus. So if you take your ass up in there, well, what do you think was going to happen? So the rolling 7-day average for daily new cases in the United States reached a record high for the 27th day in a row, climbing to 48,606 on Sunday, July 5th, 2020, according to the Washington Post tracking. Coronavirus-related hospitalizations rose to the highest levels to date in Arizona and Nevada. Let me repeat this for you. I just want people to understand. Maybe you could talk some sense into some of these Donald Trump supporters. The rolling 7-day average for daily new cases in the United States reached a record high for the 27th day in a row. Are you tired of winning? Are you tired of winning yet? You remember 2016, Donald Trump said, we're going to have so many wins. He said, you're going to say, Mr. Trump, I'm tired of winning. If you standing in the food line because you lost your job, you voted for Trump, are you tired of winning yet? I know you probably didn't foresee something like this happening. I told you he was unqualified. I told you he was a fool. I told you he was incompetent and totally unqualified to be president. The rolling 7-day average for daily new coronavirus cases in the United States reached a record high for the 27th day in a row, climbing to 48,606 on Sunday, July 5th, 2020, according to the Washington Post tracking. Coronavirus-related hospitalizations rose to their highest levels to date in Arizona and Nevada. Now, Donald Trump likes to talk about records in the stock market. Why doesn't he talk about these records? I find that very interesting. Coronavirus-related hospitalizations in California's Los Angeles County have increased by 32% in 3 weeks as the number of daily cases trend upward. The full state of California has reported a record 7-day average of cases for 19 straight days. New Jersey's Governor Phil Murphy, Democrat, whose state was battered by coronavirus in April, called for a national mask wearing requirement. The University of Washington reported that at least 121 students have tested positive for coronavirus and that 112 of them lived in fraternity houses near the Seattle campus. Now, you have a lot of schools contemplating whether or not to open back up in the fall, things like this. We haven't even seen the worst yet. This ain't even the second wave, and the virus has mutated. This is another thing. They talked about this past week. Dr. Sanjay Gupta, I think it was Dr. Sanjay Gupta on MSNBC. The virus has mutated, and it's easier to catch it now. This is what happens when you have somebody incompetent as president. This is an example. Doesn't take responsibility for when things go wrong. Try to take responsibility for stuff that President Barack Obama did. Doesn't give him credit. Lies on President Obama. All this. I mean, oh, okay. So the University of Washington, I saw an article from yahoonews.com about this. The fraternity members of fraternities there getting coronavirus. The University of Washington reported that at least 121 students have tested positive for the virus and that 112 of them lived in fraternity houses near the Seattle campus. The university's medical school has erected a pop-up testing site near the school's Greek Row. Now, I've been in the fraternity 30 years. Phi Beta Sigma Fraternity Incorporated. I'm telling you right now, if the men in the fraternity got coronavirus, it could very well be a lot of women on campus that have coronavirus also. I'm just saying. Now, frustration about the pandemic response has mounted among local leaders who say they have had to grapple with conflicting orders and frequently changing guidelines from governors and the White House as they try to curb sharply rising infections. After the state of Texas reported another single-day record for new coronavirus cases over the weekend, Austin, Texas Mayor Steve Adler, who's a Democrat, told CNN State of the Union that there won't be enough medical personnel to help. There won't be enough medical personnel to keep up with the spike in cases if the rate of increase continued unabated in his city. He said, quote, "If we don't change this trajectory, then I'm within 2 weeks of having our hospitals overrun," end quote. He went on to add that intensive care units in the city could be overflowing within 10 days. Now, this is in Austin, Texas. He said he was not sure that Texas needed a statewide shelter-in-place order, but that he wanted the authority to impose one locally. Now, Houston, Texas Mayor Sylvester Turner, who's African-American, Sylvester Turner is a Democrat. He echoed Mayor Steve Adler's concerns. Mayor Steve Adler is the mayor of Austin, Texas. The hospitals in Houston, Texas face staffing shortages as demand for ICU beds, intensive care unit beds, increases exponentially. Houston, Texas Mayor Sylvester Turner said on CBS News, Face the Nation. Houston, Texas Mayor Sylvester Turner said, quote, "In fact, if we don't get our hands around this virus quickly, in about 2 weeks, our hospital system could be in serious trouble." Demand for testing has also outstripped the city's capacity, Houston, Texas Mayor Sylvester Turner said, and the positivity rate has soared from 10% a month ago to 25% recently. They're not having more cases because of more testing. They're having more cases because it's spreading faster. The infection rate is increasing. What the hell do you have to lose? In an interview with ABC News this week, Judge Lena Hidalgo said she had been stripped of authority to issue stay-at-home orders in Harris County, Texas, as she did in the early days of the outbreak, after Governor Greg Abbott, governor of Texas, Republican, spineless, sycophant for Donald Trump, decided to move forward with an aggressive reopening plan in the spring. All she could do now was issue quote unquote recommendations, which were nowhere near as effective, she said. Judge Lena Hidalgo went on to say, quote, "As long as we're doing as little as possible and hoping for the best, we're always going to be chasing this thing. We're always going to be behind, and the virus will always outrun us. And so what we need right now is to do what works, which is a stay-home order. But Donald Trump wants to jumpstart the economy because he wants to win re-election by any means necessary. In Florida, new cases exceeded 10,000 in a day on Sunday, July 5th, for the third time in the past week, after the state posted a record high of 11,458 the previous day, Saturday, July 4th. The new infections pushed the state's total caseload past the 200,000 mark, a mark passed by just two other states, New York and California. Only two other states out of 50 have 200,000 or more cases, New York and California. And now Florida does also. But when you have somebody incompetent, like Governor Ron DeSantis as governor, who's a sycophant for Donald Trump, who shut down the economy too late, reopened too soon, this is what happens. Miami, Florida Mayor Francis X. Suarez, Republican, said it was, quote, clear that the growth is exponential at this point. You think? Governor Ron DeSantis was slow to close the beaches? Oh, it's clear the growth is exponential at this point. Are we still on? Yeah, we're still on that 10. I can't cuss right now. Okay. Quote, there's no doubt that when we reopened, people started socializing as if the virus didn't exist. Mayor Francis X. Suarez, Republican, said on ABC News. Well, he said it's extremely worrisome. Well, when you have Donald Trump, who for so long was talking about February 28th, Donald Trump said the coronavirus is the Democrats' new hoax. He doesn't wear a mask. This past week, he said it'd be a good idea for people to wear a mask, but he's not wearing one. Leadership sets examples. Leadership doesn't say do this, but then they don't do it. Leadership comes from the top down. When you are president, you are in charge of protecting the lives of 330 million people, not just the people who voted for you. Now, the Food and Drug Administration Commissioner Stephen Hahn said it was, quote, too early to tell, end quote, whether the Republican National Convention could be held safely in Jacksonville, Florida next month in August. I don't think you're going to be able to hold it next month. Now, part of me says, go ahead and hold it. Go and take your ass up in there. Part of me says that. Another part of me says, nah, maybe it's not a good idea. We'll see what happens. Food and Drug Administration Commissioner Stephen Hahn said, quote, we'll have to see how this unfolds. You're going to hold it in Jacksonville, Florida. I'll tell you what's going to happen. Florida going to be off the chain. That's what's going to happen. Coronavirus, they're not going to be able to get this under control. Quote, we'll have to see how this unfolds in Florida and elsewhere around the country, end quote, he told CNN. Now, Phoenix, Arizona Mayor Kate Gallego, Democrat, attributed soaring case numbers in Arizona to the state's decision to resume business as usual before the virus is under control. When you go look at these states that have Republican governors, you see this time after time after time after time. People just want to act like this don't exist, like it's a hoax. Okay. Next thing you know, they're up in the hospital. Keep playing around if you want to. Okay. She noted that young people who ignored health guidelines had probably led to the explosion in cases. Now, Mayor Kate Gallego, Democrat of Phoenix, Arizona, said federal officials had dismissed her request to conduct community-based testing in the area after people reported waiting in line for 6 hours at some testing sites. Donald Trump said everybody who wants a test can get a test. He didn't tell you how long you're going to have to wait in line to get that test. He didn't tell you how long you have to wait for the results. I bet Donald Trump don't have to wait 5, 6, 7 days for results. Some cases, all these are not 15-minute tests. 15-minute result tests. And so when you go research this, in some of these states, people are having to wait 4, 5, 6 days for the test results. After they wait in the line 5, 6, 7 hours, everybody who wants a test gets a test. You get a test, and you get a test, and you get a test. Now you're gonna have to take off from work. You're gonna have to take off because you're gonna be up in there for a number of hours. Trump gets the test every day. Donald Trump Jr.'s girlfriend got coronavirus. Donald Trump Jr. got a test. How did Donald Trump Jr. get a test? He doesn't work for the federal government. How do you get a test so fast? Why do people have to wait in line 5, 6 hours for a test, and Donald Trump Jr. gets one right away? He doesn't work for the federal government. He's not part of the Trump administration. Quote, we were told they're moving. Reported a weighted. Mayor Gallego said federal officials had dismissed her request to conduct community-based testing in the area after people reported waiting in line for 6 hours at some testing sites. Quote, we were told they're moving away from that, end quote, she said. Quote, which feels like they are declaring victory while we're still in crisis mode, end quote. In Greensville, South Carolina, the nightclub where 2 were killed in a shooting early Sunday, July 5th, had violated crowd restrictions. So the club had violated crowd restrictions enacted because of the pandemic, County Sheriff Hobart Lewis told the Greenville News. In fact, he said the club was not allowed to be open and officials were considering revoking its liquor and business licenses. So the club was not allowed to be open. There's a bunch of people in there and the shooting happens and 2 people were killed. The warnings came after Donald Trump said Saturday, July 4th, that his administration had made, quote, a lot of progress, end quote, in combating the coronavirus pandemic. Speaking at an Independence Day event on the White House lawn, Donald Trump said the country had, quote, learned how to put out the flame, end quote, of the coronavirus. He said, quote, our strategy is moving along well, end quote, he said, thanking frontline pandemic workers for their work. He said, quote, it goes out in one area and rears back its ugly face in another area, but we have learned a lot, end quote. There's a joke in there about rearing your ugly face and Trump, but it's too easy. I'm not going to talk about that. Trump continued to assert that testing had inflated new case numbers, a claim contradicted by rising positivity rates and widely disputed by epidemiologists. And Trump said the country was making progress on developing therapeutics and a vaccine. Public health experts have stressed that the recent surge in cases is not the result of expanded testing capacity alone. Quote, when the virus is under control, testing does not uncover more cases. It's just like when people practice safe sex or safer sex, more pregnancy tests doesn't yield more pregnancies. If you do more pregnancy tests and you have a lot more pregnancies than normal, like the pregnancy rate drastically increases, is because people are having unprotected sex. So following Donald Trump's theory, right? If we stop testing for pregnancies, we won't have any more pregnancies. Woo! Where'd y'all get this food from? That's what I want to know. But if we had been practicing political self-defense in 2016, we would have seen that threat coming in African Americans. We would have stopped them. I'm telling you right now, we would have stopped them. Instead of thinking all we have to do is invest in the stock market and build 5-story buildings and do economic empowerment and don't have to vote. I told you all that's good. We need to do that. And we need to vote to stop this fool. Because I saw what was coming. So Trump continued to assert that inflated new case numbers, a claim contradicted by rising positivity rates and widely disputed by epidemiologists, and said the country was making progress on developing therapeutics and a vaccine. Now, public health experts have stressed that the recent surge in cases is not the result of expanded testing capacity alone. When the virus is under control, testing doesn't uncover more cases. It's a tool for keeping the epidemic at bay, said former FDA Commissioner Scott Gottlieb, who served under Donald Trump. Former FDA Federal Food and Drug Administration Commissioner Scott Gottlieb voiced doubts about the country's ability to slow the pandemic, saying waves of infection will probably persist through the rest of the year. Yeah, it's going to go into next year too. Wait until the fall and winter hits and the flu hits. And we're going to be dealing with the flu and coronavirus. The situation was at least as bad as it was during the height of the outbreak in New York earlier this year, he said, except that the country was not dealing with multiple centers of infection. Quote, we're not going to really be able to crush this virus at this point because there's just so much infection around. Scott Gottlieb said on Face the Nation, we really don't seem to have the political will to do it. So now what's coming out from the Trump administration is we're just going to have to live with coronavirus. Well, I thought it was contained. I thought you declared victory over it. Now you're saying we're just going to have to live with it. Well, it's some people that are going to die from it. So when you tell us we just going to have to live with it, what is he really saying? Think about this. He doesn't wear a mask. He tacitly said it'd be a good idea for people to wear masks, things like that. It's not forceful in Trump telling, especially his followers, to wear masks. For instance, it was announced that they're going to have another rally. I forgot where it's going to be, which state it's going to be in. These poor people. And they're going to give out masks. The rally's going to be outdoors. They're going to give out masks and encourage people to wear the mask at the Trump rally, but not mandate that they wear masks at the Trump rally. All right. Calling numbers 313-778-7600. 313-778-7600 is the calling number. We have any callers, JT? Okay, Theo on line one. Welcome to the African History Network show. Thanks for holding. How you doing?
Well, thank you. Happy Sunday to you.
You too.
First, I want to thank you for being live today. Yeah, it was a good thing. And I called a few people to let them know that you were online.
Oh, thanks, Theo.
Definitely, you spoke about the public school pilot test.
Mm-hmm.
You know, there was another insult to this community when we got there. Crockett's name was taken off the school and Ben Carson's name was put up to replace.
Mm-hmm.
So all of the schools that have no person name after them, they would take that one down. And that was definitely an insult to this community. And then East English Village was city school, which was named after an abolitionist.
Which school was that? Which school was that?
Currently, it is called East English Village.
East
On the east side, Cashew.
Yeah, East English Village. Mm-hmm.
The name of it was Finney High School.
Yeah, Finney High School.
It was an abolitionist.
Mm-hmm.
So obviously, they didn't know much or didn't care much about their history when they did that.
Right. Well, unfortunately, a lot of our people don't understand their history, even if they have multiple degrees. Go ahead. We only have a couple minutes left. Go ahead.
I think they had a disease called assimilation. The other thing I wanted to ask if you had seen the commercial regarding John James, who nothing shows that he is a Republican or Federalist or anything. But this particular commercial has a white woman who is saying she has MS. And John James wants to get rid of the Affordable Care Act or Obamacare, as
Right.
they call it.
Right. Like most Republicans do.
Right. And she says, I could not vote for anybody like that.
Right. I've seen that commercial.
And so this, you seen it?
Yeah, absolutely.
There's been some complaint that it's a racist commercial. When I saw the commercial, and people that I have spoken to did not see it as a racist commercial, particularly if you know what multiple sclerosis is. It's every bit as debilitating as the coronavirus disease or COVID.
What? We only have a couple minutes here. We only have a couple minutes left, Theo. But why they say it's a racist commercial?
Because it's a white
What is it? What does that have to do with anything? Did you say, okay, who you say has multiple sclerosis?
The white woman that's
In the commercial, right? But I don't understand the connection. Why did they say a white woman who has multiple sclerosis in the commercial? John James is running for senator. He's running against Senator Gary Peters. Gary Peters is one of the senators from Michigan. And say it again. But he's married to a white woman. But John James is married to a white woman. So what? I don't understand the connection. What does that have to do with anything? Yeah, this is a legitimate commercial. So let me say this quickly because we got to go. So being that you mentioned John James, he had another commercial before that one where he was talking about criticism he received for saying he was going to fight to remove the Affordable Health Care Act, right? In the commercial, he says, "I will always protect people who have pre-existing conditions." Yeah, have you seen that commercial? No. He said, no, this is a previous one. This is from a few months ago. He says, "I will always protect people who have pre-existing conditions." But he didn't say where he was going to protect them from. Come on, man, get out of here with that nonsense. But that people can figure that out. People can figure that out. People can figure out he's a Republican when he talks about repealing the Affordable Health Care Act, because that's who wanted to repeal it. People are not listening to what I'm saying. The commercial, he said that I will always protect people with pre-existing conditions. That's politics speak. That's politician speak. He didn't say what he was going. Hold on. He didn't say what he was going to protect you from. He just said because he's trying to repeal the Affordable Health Care Act, within the Affordable Health Care Act is protecting people who have pre-existing conditions, meaning that you cannot be denied health insurance because of pre-existing conditions. If you get coronavirus is a pre-existing condition. All right, we're out of time, Theo. Thanks for calling. Thanks for holding. We're out of time. All right, call back next week. All right, everybody. Okay, I think we're out of time. We're out of time, JT. Yeah, we're out of time. Okay. All right. All right. Follow me on my social media platforms: The African History Network, The African History Network on Facebook. Michael Imhotep on YouTube. We'll continue the discussion there. Listen to the African History Network show next week. Remember, right now it's correct. Wrong behavior is not over till we win. Wakanda forever. Stay tuned for Pastor Mo. We'll talk to you next time. Peace. All right, stand by, everybody. Let me see. Are we still on? Stand by. All right, hold on. How's everybody doing? Let me see. We're still on YouTube. Just 1 second here. All right. Okay. Yeah, we're still on. Okay. It's just freezing up here. Okay. Stand by, everybody. Okay. Let's continue. Let's continue the discussion. And I saw the article here, another one dealing with Governor Gretchen Whitmer and Lewis Cass. So let me squeeze this in quickly. And let's try to close this out. Okay, Whitmer strips name of slave owner Lewis Cass from state office building. This is the article I was looking for. This is from freep.com, Detroit Free Press. Let me get through this very quickly, and then we're going to get to the unemployment numbers. Unemployment numbers, very, very interesting. Trump don't want to tell you the unemployment rate for African-American men reached a 9-year high. I wonder why. Oh, man. All right. So Governor Gretchen Whitmer announced this past Tuesday she is renaming. Let's see, this article is from Detroit Free Press, June 30th, 2019. She's renaming a state office building in Lansing, Michigan, that was named after a slave owner. Governor Whitmer said she will rename the Lewis Cass building as the Elliott Larson Building, L-A-R-S-E-N, Elliott-Larson Building. Lewis Cass was a Democrat who lived from 1782 to 1856. He is a former U.S. Senator from the state of Michigan and U.S. Secretary. He was U.S. Secretary of War under former President Andrew Jackson. And Lewis Cass was governor of the Michigan Territory before the Michigan Territory became a state. As a slave owner, Lewis Cass, C-A-S-S, advocated popular sovereignty, under which whites in the northern territories would be allowed to decide whether to permit slavery. Okay, that's similar to, let me see, hold on. Okay, so that is similar to that's similar to the Kansas-Nebraska Act of 1854. The Kansas-Nebraska Act of 1854 allowed settlers in the Western territories to determine whether or not they wanted to have slavery, as opposed to it being dictated to them by the federal government. And as a result of the Kansas-Nebraska Act of 1854, the Republican Party is going to be founded in 1854, and it was founded by groups of abolitionists. All right, now, Michigan's Elliott Larson Civil Rights Act. Elliott Larson is dealing with two people. Their last names. Michigan's Elliott Larson Civil Rights Act, which took effect in 1977, is named after the late former state representative Daisy Elliott, a Detroit Democrat, and former state representative Mel Larson, an Oxford, Michigan Republican. Okay, he was white, she was African American. Daisy Elliott. They were the main sponsors of the bill banning racial and other forms of discrimination. Okay, this is in 1977 in Michigan. Now, Governor Gretchen Whitmer's move comes as the nation confronts racism, past and present, following the Memorial Day killing of George Floyd. Okay, so we all know about that. And let me monitor this here. Let's try to pull this up just a second here. All right. Okay, so George Floyd in Minneapolis. Okay. Now, it has also given, the protests have also given new energy to efforts to take down Confederate monuments and replace racist symbols such as the Confederate emblem on the Mississippi state flag. We saw that the Mississippi state flag, we saw that the governor of Mississippi signed the bill to remove the Confederate battle flag from the Mississippi state flag this past week also. Okay, so the Governor Gretchen Whitmer said together, Melvin Larson and Daisy Elliott's names have become synonymous in Michigan with the protection of civil rights. Governor Gretchen Whitmer said in a news release. She went on to say, in 2020, we must honor the work of our predecessors who 44 years ago outlined in law the vision of what we continue to strive for even today. We must hold up those who worked to build a better Michigan for us all, regardless of race, religion, national origin, sexual orientation, and gender identity, end quote. Now, she's, and let's see, let me see if I can close this out here. Another computer. She said, though he was an important figure in Michigan's history, quote, Cass, referring to Lewis Cass, Cass owned a slave, defended a system that would permit the expansion of slavery, and under President Andrew Jackson, quote, implemented a policy that forcibly removed Native communities, Native Americans, from their tribal lands in what was known as the Trail of Tears. Governor Whitmer said. Now, Governor Gretchen Whitmer, who's white, got more sense than a lot of black people. He wasn't just a slave owner, but he defended a system that will permit the expansion of slavery. And he worked to carry out as Secretary of War under President Andrew Jackson, worked to carry out the Trail of Tears. She got more sense than a lot of black people. She went on to say, quote, today's order is a small but meaningful step forward as we seek to better express our shared values, end quote. Now, Governor Gretchen Whitmer said the change marks the first time in history that a state building has been named after a black woman. Quote, the family of Daisy Elliott is honored and grateful to the state of Michigan for acknowledging the contributions of the Elliott-Larsen Civil Rights Act, said Daisy Elliott's granddaughter, Badria Sabri. Larsen said he is, quote, humbled and thrilled at this announcement and gives all credit to Daisy Elliott, who initiated working together to sponsor the Elliott-Larsen Civil Rights Act. One of Detroit's best high schools, Cass Technical High School, my alma mater, is also named after this white supremacist slave owner who worked to carry out the Indian Removal Act of 1830, which led to the Trail of Tears, which forced the Choctaw, Chickasaw Creek, Cherokee, and Seminole Indians off their land in southeastern United States. 1/3 of the people on the Trail of Tears were African slaves and forced them to go all out over 1,000 miles into Oklahoma. That Lewis Cass. Just so we understand who we're talking about. One of Detroit's best high schools, Cass Technical High School, is also named after Lewis Cass. There are also discussions about changing the school's name. Michigan's Cass County is also named after Lewis Cass. The building Gretchen Whitmer renamed houses parts of the Department of Technology, Management, and Budget, and other state agencies. So read this article from freep.com, official website of the Detroit Free Press. Whitmer strips name of slave owner Lewis Cass from state office building. She got more sense than a lot of black people. And I'm just saying, people may get mad at me. I really don't give a damn. So then, the Cass Tech and Alumni Association, Cass said they're not going to change the name and all that. Okay. Yeah. One of these days, we're going to straighten up and fly right. One of these days, we're going to straighten up and fly right. Okay, so let's see. So read this article, and let's see, what did I post? Though he wasn't important. Okay, I posted the comment from Governor Gretchen Whitmer. All right, let's continue here. So the unemployment numbers came out. So the unemployment numbers normally come out Thursday morning, 8:30 a.m. And they tell how many people filed for unemployment the previous week. And then the jobs numbers, job creation numbers, come out usually the first Friday of each month. But because of the 4th of July holiday, they came out on the same day. So if we look at this article here from, let's look at two of them. I posted the one from the Washington Post also. Washington Post had a really good article. But NBCnews.com, U.S. economy gains 4.8 million jobs. Unemployment rate falls to 11.1%. Donald Trump touted the job data as the largest jobs gain in the history of our country. So the U.S. economy gained a whopping 4.8 million jobs in the month of June 2020, bringing the unemployment rate to 11.1% and roundly beating economists' expectations. The June data released Thursday by the Bureau of Labor Statistics, you can go to their website, bls.gov, Bureau of Labor Statistics. You can read the unemployment report there. It came out one day early in deference to the July 4th holiday. It reflects a labor market that is slowly healing from the devastating effects of the coronavirus pandemic. Now, economists had expected an increase of 3 million new jobs and an unemployment rate of 12.3%, though a large element of uncertainty prevailed after May's surprise gain of 2.5 million jobs when economists had predicted a loss of as much as 8 million. Now, Donald Trump touted the job numbers as representing the largest gain in the history of our country during a news briefing on Thursday morning. Today's announcement proves that our economy is roaring back. It's coming back extremely strong. No, it's not. Trump specifically praised the 356,000 gains in manufacturing, which he said were because of great trade policy. Although the number of total jobs added is huge by any historical measure, the economy is still a long way back. Is still a long way from back to normal, said Dan North, North, who is a senior economist at Euler Hermes North America. He said, quote, "It's still only chipping away at the 22 million or so jobs we lost." That's true. Now, the weekly initial jobless claims numbers were also released on Thursday, showing that 1.4 million, 1,427,000 people filed for first-time jobless benefits. Now, Trump didn't really talk about that. That came out the same day. And that came out, the 1.4 million who filed for unemployment the week before, those numbers come out before the job numbers. But they came out the same day. Trump didn't really want to talk about that. Quote, "We've seen the curve going down, but we're still at previously astronomical levels," Dan North said. Okay, so the timing for now, when you research this, the survey for the jobs numbers, the job creation numbers, that basically represents, that's basically from early June, before a lot of these states had to start pulling back and going back into some form of a shutdown and closing bars and restaurants, etc. Also, when you look at the jobs that were created, or these are basically people being called back to work, a large percentage of these jobs were in leisure, hospitality, restaurants, bars, things like that. Okay, so check this out. And if we look at the article from NBCnews.com, latest jobs report shows Black unemployment continues to rise faster, recover more slowly. This is from July 2nd, 2020. Unemployed African Americans historically remain without work, even as unemployment for some other populations show faster signs of recovery, a trend again reflected in the latest monthly employment report released Thursday by the Department of Labor. While all groups saw gains, they were not even. Recovery for Asian workers last month, the month of June, was slowest, less than 1 percentage point. Hispanic rehiring, Latino rehiring has been swiftest, with white workers close behind, but the employment gains began a month before other groups and have had the steadiest recovery, dropping from 14.2% in April to 10.1% in June. African-American unemployment fell to 15.4% in June, down from a high of 16.8% in May, and is the highest of all groups. Donald Trump touted, quote unquote, record gains made by Black workers, saying at a news conference Thursday morning, quote, African-American workers really happily for me made historic gains with 400,000 jobs added last month. Okay. This is largely African-Americans being called back to work. But if you were in states that open up too fast, you could be called back to work to your demise. However, families, the article goes on to say, however, families left behind are scrambling to pay their rent and electrical bills and piecing together assistance in order to put food on the table. Orlando Dunham, 38 years old, a 38-year-old Black woman from Georgia, furloughed in March from her jobs as a line cook from 2 different restaurants, said, quote, "I'm surviving. It may be perceived as if I have it all together, but I don't. At home, she lives with her disabled mother, whom she takes care of, who she helps take care of, and her elderly grandmother." Now, Orlando Dunham applied for unemployment and received it. When the benefits suddenly stopped in June 2020, an issue, she said, affected over a dozen of her coworkers at O'Charlie's, a casual dining chain. Now, she told NBC News she kept trying to contact the state unemployment office, but could not get anyone on the phone, and did not want the health risks of trying to go in person to the state unemployment office. Now, Orlando Dunham said she is exhausted from jumping through hoops and not getting answers from managers, and she's getting desperate. Having just received her SNAP food benefits card, Dunham told NBC News that for the first time in her life, she's trying to put together the words to ask her landlord for a break. She said, "I'm so used to paying bills on time. I've never had to do this, never had to ask for a favor. I don't know how to." Now, in response to inquiries from NBC News, the Georgia Department of Labor contacted Orlando Dunham to let her know her employer needed to request benefits on her behalf. Under a recent and unique emergency rule intended to streamline a process straining under the demand influx, Georgia employers must file weekly for workers who have been furloughed or had their hours reduced, or the workers will stop receiving benefits. That's a lot of work for I'm telling you right now, that's a lot of work for an employer to have to do, to file benefits every week for the employer, and that business may not even be open. Now, reached for comment by NBC News, O'Charlie CEO Craig Barber blamed, quote, "an inadvertent formatting error," end quote, for delaying the claims, and said the corporate office had already identified the issue and filed an amended claim. Backlogged unemployment benefits were later posted to Orlando Dunham and to other staff. Now, quote, "O'Charlie's has been and remains fully committed." Just a second. All right. So a statement from O'Charlie said, "O'Charlie's has been and remains fully committed to ensure we are responsive to any issues or concerns of our team members, and specifically when it involves their benefits." Craig Barber, CEO of O'Charlie said in a statement emailed to NBC News. Now, African-American workers are most likely to be in jobs affected by the coronavirus that can't be done remotely and require face-to-face contact, such as food service and hospitality, manufacturing, temp work, and nursing, said Gary Burtless, Burtless, who is a labor economist at the liberal-leaning Brookings Institution. He said, quote, "Disproportionately, the layoffs have been in lower wage occupations, in lower wage positions. That has disproportionately affected African Americans and Hispanics." And let me try to go to this clip here also. Okay, let's continue. Now, workers in the food and service industries are among those hardest hit by the lockdowns implemented nationwide to halt the spread of the coronavirus. Even in restaurants and bars that have been reopened, customers are only trickling back. Natia Johnson, 28 years old, was furloughed in March 2020 from her job as a server and bartender at a pizza parlor on Bourbon Street in New Orleans. She said, me and my daughter had to move in with a friend that just so happened to owe me money before the pandemic. What the hell do you have to lose? Now, in early June, restaurants and bars began to reopen in Louisiana, but the capacity was greatly reduced, said Natia Johnson. She said her employer only called 3 workers back. She was not one of them. She said, I was making $1,000 weekly, thanks to tips, she said. Now I'm depending on the government. I can't depend on someone else if I'm the sole provider for another human being. Okay, her child. All right, this is deep. Now, are you tired of winning yet? Okay, read the rest of this article. NBCnews.com. Latest jobs report shows Black unemployment continues to rise faster, recover more slowly. Now, on the July 3rd edition of Roland Martin Unfiltered, and we share the live broadcast of Roland Martin Unfiltered on our Facebook fan page, The African History Network. It's a fantastic show. If our people watch Roland Martin Unfiltered, watch that daily. It airs live 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. Then he re-airs it. Our whole mindset will shift. Okay, I'm serious. Right now, let's correct wrong behavior. Also, if you want to donate to the African History Network, $, the AHN Show through Cash App, $, the AHN Show through Cash App, and then also through PayPal, paypal.me/the AHN Show through PayPal, or at our website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. Click on the yellow donate button. Right on the homepage, you can donate there. Okay. On the July 3rd edition of Roland Martin Unfiltered, Roland talked about the unemployment rates that came out on Thursday. Non-farm payroll soared by 4.8 million in June 2020, and the unemployment rate fell to 11.1% as the U.S. continued its reopening from the coronavirus pandemic. Keep in mind that survey of the 4.8 million jobs created, that is largely before states started having to reverse reopening. Let's go to this clip here.
Filter.com, you can make this possible. All right, folks, non-farm payroll soared by 4.8 million in June. The unemployment rate fell to 11.1% as the U.S. continues to reopen after in the midst of the coronavirus pandemic. Now, Donald Trump took a victory lap at a news conference today saying...
Oh, hold on. Just a second, let me go back to this clip here. Hit the wrong button. Hold on, I'll get the cue back up. Just a minute here. We'll go back to this. We'll go back to this clip. Hold on, let me open this up in another tab. Just a minute here. All right, it has to queue up.
Bring the Funk Fan Club. Digital show out here that keeps it black and keep it real. As Roland Martin Unfiltered. Support the Roland Martin Unfiltered Daily Digital Show by going to RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. You can make this possible. All right, folks. Non-farm payroll soared by 4.8 million in June. The unemployment rate fell to 11.1% as the U.S. continues to reopen after in the midst of the coronavirus pandemic. Now, Donald Trump took a victory lap at a news conference today, saying today's announcement proves that our economy is roaring back. And also, they touted black unemployment falling from 16.8% to 15.4%. But you might want to slow that down a little bit. Howard University economist Bill Spriggs, who's also, of course, the top economist with the AFL-CIO, put this tweet out. Not sure what Trump is crowing about to the black community. The unemployment rate for adult black men rose to 16.3%, its highest level in 9 years. When he took office, he inherited the lowest unemployment rate for black men any incoming president ever started their term with. Isn't it amazing what happens when you actually have the details? Joining us right now, Dr. Greg Carr, Chair, Department of Afro-American Studies at Howard University, Reese Colbert, Black Women's Views, and Erica Savage Wilson, host of the Savage Politics Podcast. Greg, I'll start with you. Again, I got a nice little cute email from Paris Denard, just crowing about these numbers. But then I responded to him and the White House. Do y'all have any comment about the unemployment rate going up for black men? No response.
Well, of course. I mean, Paris is doing his job. You don't get paid to do anything other than to promote Donald Trump, who didn't talk about the pandemic, the surge, who didn't talk about the 10,000 new cases in Florida today.
Greg, hold tight 1 second. Greg, do you have a fan on? We can barely hear you. There's a loud buzz. So let's do this here. I'm gonna go to Reese. We're gonna come back to Greg. You guys take care of that loud buzz. We can barely hear Greg. Reese, go ahead. Your thoughts.
Yeah, I think that the COVID-19 pandemic has exposed the great systemic institutionalized racism that we have in our economy and in our country. And it's no surprise whatsoever that even as jobs are being added back, Black people and particularly Black men are being left behind. So we have nothing to celebrate yet. These are not new jobs. These are jobs that were furloughed or that were shut down because of the pandemic, returning back to normalcy. But guess what? We have another shutdown coming down, or at least another scale back coming down. And so this is a temporary reprieve, but we also have the unemployment insurance, $600 a week that's going to be running out, that Mitch McConnell has signaled he has no interest in extending. So there are many, many more problems over the horizon, not just for Black men, but for the country in general.
Erica.
Yeah, and then we're also looking at reporting from places like Queens, New York, where folks who were impacted heavily by the coronavirus are having a most difficult time re-engaging the economy again. We're looking at where investments were and where they weren't placed. And then we're also looking at moratoriums expiring for people that are living in apartments and they're facing eviction. So there is a lot more work ahead. And even when we look at the Great Recession, which is something that we can kind of look back at that was most closely to a real issue, economic issue, we saw that Black people, Black men, Black women had the most difficult time of being able to restart being back into the economy again. So him celebrating is really par for the course. It's classic Donald Trump, and I don't think that anyone should expect anything more from him than what we saw today.
Greg. All right, we're trying to reconnect with Greg, and so we'll do that in just a second, trying to get his audio straight. Look, bottom line is this here: when you look at these economic numbers, they can play the game, but they have done an awful job when it comes to the coronavirus response. All right,
Okay, so check that out from follow Roland on YouTube, Roland Martin on YouTube. That clip was from July 3rd. Black male unemployment hits highest rate in 9 years as Trump touts drop in unemployment. All right, let's continue here. I want to switch gears. Let's go to this last story. The rest of this stuff's going to wait till next week. Let's see, how's everybody doing? And we're broadcasting on my YouTube channel, Michael Imhotep, IMHOTEP on YouTube. And then also on my Facebook fan page, The African History Network, The African History Network on Facebook. Be sure to follow us and turn on your notifications so you know when I go live as well. Because I don't think Facebook is notifying everybody when I go live, and also YouTube is not, because I find some people who subscribe on my YouTube channel, they stumble upon my live broadcast and say, hey, I did not get a notification that you're on live. So on YouTube and Facebook, be sure to turn on live notifications. Make sure those are on. All right, let's look at, there's a good article that came out, a good study came out from the Washington Post. It deals with African Americans paying property taxes. Analysis: Black families pay significantly higher property taxes than white families. New analysis. State by state, neighborhood by neighborhood, Black families pay 13% more in property taxes each year than a white family would in the same situation. A massive new data analysis shows. Black-owned homes are consistently assessed at higher values relative their actual sale price, SALE, actual sale price, than white homes, according to a new working paper by economist Troop Howard of the University of Utah and Carlos Avendaño, Avendaño Leon of Indiana University. Now, African Americans have long said they bear a disproportionate burden for taxes that support local police, schools, and parks, but nationwide measures of this type of systemic racism are hard to come by. To expose the structural and historical factors behind these discriminatory property tax assessments, the economists analyzed more than a decade of tax assessment and sales data for 118 million homes throughout the US. Okay, they assessed a decade's worth of tax assessments and sales data for 118 million homes throughout the US. Now, in almost every state, property tax assessments were higher in areas with more African American and Hispanic residents. In city after city, the authors show it is not just differences in the buildings or land, but also the racial composition of the neighborhood that matters. And I'm going to try to go to this segment from Ali Velshi show on MSNBC when he interviewed Andre Perry from the Brookings Institute. Now, the gap between white families and minority households remains large, 10%. When you combine data for Hispanic and African American families, the authors excluded the state of California because Proposition 13, passed in 1978, drastically changed how property is valued there. Now, the findings did not surprise Charles, a Chicago area general contractor in his mid-60s. He said, quote, "We've always considered that in addition to paying your regular tax, there was a black tax that goes along with it. We always considered that in addition to paying your regular tax, there was a black tax that goes along with it." Charles spoke on the condition that his last name not be used. He cited elevated personal and professional risks faced by African American men right now. Now, 18 years ago, high and rising taxes drove Charles from his longtime home in an African American neighborhood on Chicago's South Side to a predominantly white neighborhood in Northwest Indiana. His was the only black family on the block, but his property taxes were much lower than in Chicago, and they stayed that way. Okay, and let me see. Let's try to get this clip up. But he said he has never escaped what is often called the black tax. He said, quote, it's almost like it's in the soil. It stretches all across the board. Estate is not just housing, it's not just food deserts, it's not just racism on the street, it's not just that you can't get a cab at night, it's everything. So racism is a system, and you know, I do this in my training. I did some training for an environmental justice group a couple of weeks ago. We have some more training coming up that I'm doing, and also have another training this Thursday for another group as well. So if you want me to do training for your organization dealing with history and politics and things like this, various activist groups want me to do training, etc., email me at info at africanhistorynetwork.com, info at africanhistorynetwork.com, or TheAHNShow at gmail.com, TheAHNShow at gmail.com. Okay, you can also call me 313-462-0003. Let's continue here. All right. So racism is a system of advantage and privilege distributed based upon race that comes out of the ideology of European white supremacy. Racism has nothing to do with not liking people, calling people racial epithets, or anything like that. If you don't understand, if you don't clearly understand and you won't be able to defeat this you're fighting. This is part of the problem. Okay, a couple years ago on MSNBC, Joanne Reed and Chris Hayes co-hosted an event, came on like 8:00 at night, called Everyday Racism in America. Okay, and it just so happened to be on the same day that Roseanne Barr was fired from her reboot of the show Roseanne. Okay, and they're talking about everyday racism in America, things like this. They spent an hour talking about racism and never define from a historical perspective what the hell it is they're talking about. So racism has nothing to do with calling people racial epithets, not liking people, anything. That's not racism, that's bigotry. Racism deals with a power structure. Racism is a system of advantage and privilege distributed based upon race. Racism occurs when one race of people control the majority of the wealth, power, resources, privileges, benefits, land, access to education, access to opportunity, media, jobs, healthcare, etc., and they use that to marginalize, subordinate, and do harm to another race of people. This is racism. Dorothy Brown, an Emory University law professor who researches systemic racism in tax policy and was not involved in the study, sees the same pervasive effect. Quote, the structure of the property tax system operates to disadvantage African Americans. The structure of the property tax system operates to disadvantage African Americans, she said. Quote, that's how structural racism is. Racism is structural by nature. Racism is a system of advantage and privilege distributed based upon race. Saying structural racism is redundant. She said it's built into the system. The property tax system itself discriminates against African Americans. What is the system? When we hear about a system, we may think a Windows 10 operating system. We may think something that's nebulous, something that's abstract, something that's out there. No, a system is a group of people indoctrinated with a certain ideology who work to uphold and enforce that ideology. That is a system. The system is the people. The system is not a computer program. The system is not something nebulous out there. The system is the people who have been indoctrinated with white supremacy and racism. That's the system. So there has to be a reorientation. There has to be a re-education. And the history of African Americans must be taught in every school across the country, not just the schools that we are the predominant student body in. The history of African Americans has to be taught in every school across the country. Now, inequities in tax assessment are among many factors weighing on African-American home ownership rates nationwide. Donald Trump don't want to deal with none of this. Facing the accumulated disadvantages of centuries of repression and systemic racism, African Americans are likely to earn less than similar white workers in lower paying service jobs, a dynamic that makes it more difficult to buy a home. Now, by hitting those jobs first and hardest, the coronavirus pandemic has made a bad situation worse. 1 in 5 African-American households have reported missing a mortgage payment since mid-March, compared with about 1 in 20 white households. 1 in 5 African-American households have reported missing a mortgage payment since mid-March, compared with about 1 in 20 white households. Quote, during the Jim Crow era, local white officials routinely manipulated property tax assessments to overburden and punish African-American populations, and as a hidden tax break to land-owning white gentry, said University of Virginia historian Andrew Carl. There's an article that Andrew Carl wrote for New York Times, deals with stolen land. And it deals with a history of how African Americans, how we had our land stolen from us by over assessing the property value, which increases the property taxes that we have to pay. This is for the New York Times, June 30th, 2019. Black people's land was stolen. Black people's land was stolen by Andrew W. Carl. Any discussion of reparations must include how this happened, who did it, and the laws, policies, and practices that allowed it. Racism is a system of advantage and privilege distributed based upon race. Racism occurs when one race of people control the majority of the wealth, power, resources, benefits, privileges, land, access to opportunity, laws, etc., and use this to marginalize, subordinate, and do harm to another race of people. This is what racism is. All right, just 1 second here. Let me change the memory card. Video camera. Just 1 second here. All right, let's keep going for a few more minutes here. This is what racism is, okay? Read this article from New York Times, because a lot of our people are confused. I'm telling you, a lot of our people are confused. And if you are confused, you don't know which direction to go in. You end up voting for Kanye West, stupid ass, because you think you're doing something. That'll help Donald Trump get back in office. Just like voting for Jill Stein, dumbass, help Donald Trump get in office. Okay, so read that article by Andrew Carl. Black people's land was stolen. It's from New York Times, opinion piece he wrote for the New York Times. An excerpt of it says, let's see. But in addition to invoking the 40 acres Black people never got, the reparations movement today should be talking about the approximately 11 million acres Black people had, acres of land Black people had, but lost in many cases through fraud, deception, and outright theft, much of it taken in the past 50 years. These property holdings could have provided a foundation for Black wealth building in post-Jim Crow era. Instead, they became a source of riches for others. Rather than helping to close the racial wealth gap, Blacks' land holdings became a key force in widening the racial wealth gap. Black land taking has been as instrumental as the denial of opportunities to acquire property in creating today's racial wealth inequality and others, and offers a more telling indicator of the barriers to upward mobility African Americans faced and continue to face in America. Racism is a system of advantage and privilege distributed based upon race. And as Dr. Francis Cress Welsing and Nellie Fuller correctly taught us, if you do not understand European white supremacy and racism, what it is and how it works, everything else that you think that you understand will totally confuse you. Let's go to this clip from MSNBC. Ali Velshi interviewed Andre Perry, a fellow at the Brookings Institute and author of Know Your Price, Valuing Black Lives and Property in America's Black Cities. Andre Perry explains how segregation robbed African-American households of the wealth needed to withstand crises like the coronavirus. Let's go to this clip.
For more on how this has an impact on the Black community, I'm joined by Andre Perry, fellow at the Brookings Institute. He's the author of the book, Know Your Price, Valuing Black Lives and Property in America's Black Cities. Andre, good to see you. Thank you for joining me. Here's the issue. In the end, we're talking about wages and percentages and things like that. But the net effect here of inequality with African Americans and Hispanics is wealth, right? Over time, the additive effect of higher unemployment rates and spreads in hourly wages result in wealth. And when you take that over 100 years or 150 years, it reflects what we see today, that in the Black community, we have substantially, in fact, 1/10 the wealth that you have in the white community in America.
Yeah, business owners all across the country screamed for support after 3 weeks of social distancing, 3 months of social distancing. But Black communities have been socially distanced for generations. And so that the loss of wealth over time erodes the protection people need during times like this. As was mentioned, Blacks are concentrated in the jobs that are temporary, that will likely be in and out because of the nature of the work, restaurants, the health industry. We are in industries that will push and pull along with the virus. And so we don't have the protection of wealth, and we're in jobs that will be in and out of work over the next year or so. And so it really spells not for a good economy for Black Americans moving forward.
I want to put up a chart of average family liquid retirement savings, because sometimes that's where the rubber hits the road, right? A lot of people's wealth is in their home. That's not a liquid retirement saving, but liquid, things that you can cash out. Take a look at this. This is 3 chunks that look at
Hold on, let me pause it right
to
there.
2016. On the left is white liquid wealth. In the middle is
Just a second, let me back it up. It's buffering a little bit. Hold on just a second. Let's continue.
1989 to 2016. On the left is white liquid wealth. In the middle is black. And
just very quickly. Okay, this is from the Urban Institute. Average family liquid retirement savings, 1989 to 2016. For white people from 1989 to 2016, it goes from $32,649 in 1989 to $157,000 in 2016 for white people. For African Americans, it goes from $5,954 in 1989 to $25,212 in 2016. For Hispanics, it goes from $7,122 in 1989 to $28,581 in 2016. Okay, that's average family liquid retirement savings. Okay, and all right, so let's continue here.
on the right is Hispanic. The black and Hispanic are almost, you can't even differentiate between them. The average black family has $25,000 of liquid retirement savings, which, by the way, doesn't mean you need to use it for anything other than retirement. But look at the difference there.
Yeah, you know, what's interesting, a study just came out this week that showed that blacks are paying about 13% more in property taxes. And as you know, my research shows that Black property is devalued, meaning that they're priced lower than what they should be. So we're paying more in taxes, and that's what we generally call the black tax that people pay for, it's the penalty that people pay for living in a black neighborhood. And so we have less discretionary income that was created by policy. Remember, the Homeowners Loan Corporation drew red lines around black neighborhoods in the 30s and deeming those communities too risky to invest in. And that not only in a material sense is carried throughout generations, but it is also carried through in terms of perspective. Black communities, Black people are devalued, and it's literally robbing us of the wealth that is needed to withstand crises like these.
Andre, good to talk to you as always. Andre Perry of the Brookings Institute. He's the author of Know Your Price, Valuing Black Lives and Property in America's Black Cities. Okay, so now this is why, like a couple Sundays, a couple shows ago, when I talked about the Kerner Commission report, this is why the Kerner Commission report from 1968 has to be implemented. Because implementing the Kerner Commission report and the findings from the Kerner Commission report will help close the racial wealth gap, that investment into African-American communities. So go to blackpast.org, and search for Kerner Commission report and read there. They have a really good article dealing with that. That is their report on civil disorders that President Andrew Johnson commissioned in 1967, July 1967, to study the rebellions that were taking place all across the country. And we know in 1967 alone, there were 159 violent uprisings in this country. Not all of them on the level of a Detroit, Michigan, of course. But he wanted to find out what caused the rebellions, why were they happening, and what can be done to prevent them from taking place. And they did the investigation, and they studied 23 cities across the country where the rebellions were taking place. And they talked about how this had to do with poverty, racism, lack of job opportunities, poor education systems, police brutality, all different types of things like this. The Kerner Commission report, okay? That needs to be implemented. They came out with their findings, and President Johnson accepted the report, but didn't really accept the findings from the report, and basically put it to the side. He was also dealing with the Vietnam War as well, which really complicated matters. But the Kerner Commission report is something that needs to be implemented. Let me see. I had an article I just talked about the Kerner Commission report. It's talking about in my training. A lot of people don't know about, especially a lot of millennials, don't know about the Kerner Commission report. And see, one of the problems is a lot of activists mean well, but don't understand history. And as I explained to activists, two things you have to study are history and law. You have to study history and law. Because if you don't study history and law, you will be confusing activity with productivity, oftentimes. Here it is. This one right here. Read this article from blackpast.org. I got a bunch of information on this. National Advisory Commission on Civil Disorders, 1967 Kerner Commission. It was announced July 28th, 1967. President Johnson charged the commission with answering three questions. What happened? Why did it happen? What can be done to prevent racial disturbances in the future? So in order to answer these questions, the commission surveyed 23 cities across the nation which experienced a racial rebellion. They found that the racial disturbances were not the result of a single triggering event, just like the protests
all out in the streets going on for weeks. All that wasn't because of George Floyd. That was an inflection point. That was the straw that broke the camel's back. In order to answer these questions, the commission surveyed 23 cities across the nation which experienced a racial rebellion. They found that the racial disturbances were not the result of a single triggering event, but that in all cities surveyed, 23 cities, African Americans experienced severe economic and social disadvantages compared to white people. Also, the report noted that the riots were not the result of any conspiracy. Rather, they were a response to what the report identified as the racial attitudes and behaviors of white Americans towards African Americans. In responding to why the rebellions occurred, the Kerner report pointed to African Americans' frustration and feelings of powerlessness regarding extremely high rates of unemployment and underemployment, poverty, police brutality, and inadequate public services. The Kerner Commission report continued that a largely poor Black population was confined to the central cities, while a predominantly white population moved out, that's called white flight, and that the racism of white Americans was, quote, essentially responsible for the explosive mixture, end quote, leading to the uprisings. Answering the question, what can be Commission suggested that the federal government intervene to improve housing, improve education, improve employment opportunities, and improve social services for African Americans. Also, to dismantle discriminatory practices in education, in discriminatory practices in employment, the police force, and the criminal court system or criminal justice system. President Johnson accepted the report but did not support the conclusions, and minimal efforts were made to address the problems identified by the Kerner Commission. That report needs to be revisited and fully implemented. Okay, so back to the article from the Washington Post. Analysis: Black families pay significantly higher property taxes than white families, new analysis shows. So many county assessors initially intentionally overvalued African-American properties, sometimes in direct retaliation for African-American political action. Andrew Carl, who has long researched the history of property tax discrimination against African Americans, has found white officials going to extreme lengths to hike Black Americans, to hike Black taxes, okay? Going to extreme lengths to increase the property taxes of land owned by African Americans. And in one such case in 1932, a Black North Carolina resident was taxed for the value of 2 stray dogs that have been seen on her property. Taxed for the value of 2 stray dogs that had been seen on her property. As early as 1901, Dr. W.B. Du Bois showed that because of their unequal tax burden, Black people paid more in taxes than they received in public education funds. 1901, Dr. W.B. Du Bois showed that because of their unequal tax burden, African Americans paid more in taxes than they received in public education funds, Andrew Carl noted. All right, how's everybody doing on Facebook and YouTube? Everybody share this broadcast on your social media platforms. You're not going to hear this type of information a lot of other places, okay? This ain't a whole lot of gossip in Jada and August Alsina and did she did all this bull, all this stuff, okay? This is some real consequential policies, okay? So Dr. W.B. Du Bois worked to counter the racist narrative of white people as makers and Black people as takers. Now, the fiction that, quote, Black people take services, but they don't pay taxes, end quote, remains widespread. I've heard some ignorant as African Americans say stuff like that too. But in recent decades, the forces raising Black tax bills are more subtle. In recent decades, the forces raising Black tax bills are more subtle. And see, this is the problem when you sit and watch Fox News all day. This right-wing Republican nonsense, they feed this to our people. Well, some of our people sit and watch Fox News. I don't know why. Or listen to a right-wing conservative talk radio. Because right-wing conservative talk radio reaches more people than the Fox News network. So the value of Black-owned homes tends to grow more slowly than values of white-owned homes. The white people who make up the vast majority of home buyers tend to avoid African-American neighborhoods, which cuts Black sellers off from many potential buyers. Let me repeat this. The white people who make up the vast majority of home buyers tend to avoid African-American neighborhoods, which cuts African-American sellers off from many potential buyers. That can drive down the sale price of African-American owned homes. Given that difference in price appreciation, if an assessor assumes a Black-owned home gains value as quickly as a white-owned home, the assessed value of the Black-owned home will quickly outstrip its market value. Every year, the African-American family pays more in property taxes, even though the sales price of its home is not increasing as quickly. Every year, the African-American family pays more in property taxes, even though the sales price of its home is not increasing as quickly. Nearby white families benefit from the opposite trend. Their homes increase in value more rapidly than their assessments, giving them an ever-growing tax break. Their homes increase in value more rapidly than their property tax assessments, giving them an ever-growing tax break. While neighborhood and race are the biggest drivers of the property tax, the economists found others, other drivers. And the appeals process illustrates how much of the property tax system functions in a way that penalizes African-American wealth, even as it appears neutral on its face. So as part of the study, the economists reviewed 3.4 million property tax appeals from Chicago and surrounding Cook County, Illinois, and found African-American homeowners were significantly less likely to appeal their property tax assessments, because you can appeal your property tax assessments. A lot of counties, states will allow you to do that. When they did appeal, African-American homeowners were less likely to win the appeal. And when they won, they earned smaller assessment reductions. Racism is a system of advantage and privilege distributed based upon race. Racism occurs when one race of people control the majority of the wealth, power, resources, privileges, benefits, land, access to education, access to opportunity, laws, tax assessment, access to healthcare, jobs, etc. And they use this to marginalize, subordinate, and do harm to another race of people. Nationwide appeals data does not exist. So nationwide data on the number of appeals and to tax assessment and the results does not exist. And Cook County, Illinois may be exceptional, but the findings ring true to Black homeowners and experts throughout the country. Now, let's see here. Okay. Damali Vidot, V-I-D-O-T, Damali Vidot is an Afro-Latina member of the Chelsea, Massachusetts City Council. And she is familiar with these tax assessment challenges. She has long fought housing insecurity in her predominantly Latino, predominantly immigrant city just north of Boston. She said, quote, white people feel more comfortable working within a system that was set up to make them succeed, she said. And she is a homeowner and community youth mentor who is running for the state legislature. She said, quote, it makes sense that a Black family who has been disenfranchised from these systems would not challenge it, would not challenge the system. It makes sense that an African-American family that has been disenfranchised from the system would not challenge the system. It is also difficult to work within the system for Latinos, many of whom do not speak English as a first language, she added. Now, Hazel Shakur has sold homes in the well-off, mostly African-American suburbs of Prince George's County in Maryland for the better part of 2 decades. She is one of Redfin's top-selling agents in the county, but still faces the ever-present frustration of potential bidders backing out when they see how high their property tax bills will be. Hazel Shakur has a business degree from American University, earned on a full scholarship, and has negotiated nearly 500 real estate transactions. Yet she said it had not occurred to her to challenge her own property taxes. Now, she's made nearly 500 real estate deals. She has a business degree from American University, but she said it had not occurred to her to challenge her own property taxes. She grew up in a renter household and was not taught about appealing property taxes or any of the other small strategies white homeowners have used to accumulate generational wealth. She said, quote, sometimes you're so glad to finally get somewhere that you don't want to make a lot of noise and create any unwanted attention. You're just so grateful to have arrived and made it, and you pay your bill, she said. Quote, even if you're not happy about your property taxes, it doesn't occur to you to question, end quote. Both economists behind the study first heard of overtaxation when talking with African-American and Hispanic homeowners in their prior work. Before he studied economics, Evanasio Leon provided legal support at a Bay Area housing clinic. When he worked with other people of color, many told him they were not able to afford taxes and other housing costs. Quote, they feel their property taxes were being used to push them out of their places, especially when communities started gentrifying, Avanasio Leon said. It helped him see how property taxation can be used as a means of social engineering. Around the same time, Howard was working in minority communities around Chicago. Okay, and that is, who is that? It's not Dorothy Brown. Who is Howard? Troop Howard, economist Troop Howard of the University of Utah. Okay. So around the same time, Troop Howard was working in minority communities around Chicago, where people said they were being overtaxed and underserved by local governments. The feeling was pervasive, but nobody had been able to measure it nationally. So the duo then worked on doctorate degrees at the University of California at Berkeley, combined 118, let's see. So the duo then working on doctorate degrees at the University of California at Berkeley, combined 118 million real estate transactions and assessments from 2005 to 2016 with maps of more than 75,000 local taxing entities, such as counties, school districts, airport authorities, and utility districts. They use the maps to sort homes into areas that face the same property tax burdens, identify the races of homeowners using federal mortgage data, and looked at every time a dwelling was assessed and then sold in the same year. That allowed them to compare a home's assessed value at its market value. That allowed them to compare a home's assessed value and its market value alongside the homeowner's race and ethnicity. The property tax gaps are worst for low earners, but even the highest earning African Americans pay more on average in property taxes than similarly well-off white peers living nearby. Okay, so even the highest earning African Americans pay more on average in property taxes than similarly well-off white peers living nearby. While the analysis is not designed to show quote unquote active discrimination, it cannot be ruled out, Troop Howard said. But he said, quote, you can equally tell the story that assessors, property tax assessors, don't realize how unequally the burden is landing along racial and ethnic lines, end quote. So whether or not these gaps were caused by explicit racism, Dorothy Brown said, quote, you should be just as outraged that this is going on, and we should find a way to fix it, end quote. So check out this article from Washington Post, and Michelle Singletary, who used to host Singletary Says on TV One, and she writes a column dealing with personal finances. Michelle Singletary contributed to this report as well. This is an article by the Washington Post. Analysis: Black families pay significantly higher property taxes than white families, new analysis shows. I also saw an article from yahoonews.com about this study as well. This article was by Andrew Van Damclose, who is a reporter focusing on economic data. All right, so check that out. This is from July 2nd, 2020. This is deep. This deals with racism, how all this is baked into the game, and this deals with laws. All right. How's everybody doing here? And on Facebook, Jackie and Mark. Yeah, this ties into redlining as well. Redlining was created by the federal government, coming from the Homeowners Loan Corporation. Homeowners Loan Corporation created about 1933. All right. Okay, everybody. Hey, if you like this type of information, you can donate to the African History Network. That helps us to broadcast our shows, finance the African History Network, finance our Sunday night show, etc. $, the AHN show through Cash App, $, the AHN show through Cash App. Also through PayPal, paypal.me/the AHN show, paypal.me/the AHN show, or at our website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. Click on the yellow donate button right on our homepage. Okay. And my online courses are available at our website. They're on demand as well. Ancient Kemet, the Moors, and the Ma'afa, Understanding the Transatlantic Slave Trade, what they didn't teach you in school. I deal with thousands of years of history. That's available at our website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. Also, I have to, maybe sometime soon, I'll teach that course again. It's very time intensive. Follow me on my Facebook fan page, The African History Network, The African History Network. And my YouTube channel, Michael Imhotep, IMHOTEP. Turn on notifications so you know when we go live. Sign up for our email newsletter. Text the word Kemet, Kemet, to 22828 to sign up for our email newsletter. Text the word Kemet, Kemet, to 22828 to sign up for our email newsletter. And you saw this past week, more information came out about the scandal dealing with the Russians putting bounties on the heads of U.S. soldiers. I told you it was going to be a huge story. We talked about that last Sunday. I told you it was going to be a huge story. I told you it wasn't going to go away. We see it continues to get worse. New York Times reported they found the bag man as well, dealing with that also. So we'll talk about that some next Sunday. It's getting worse for Trump. And people are finding out. I told you before, he's a traitor, the traitor in chief. People are finding this out. All right, look, we have to get out of here. Remember, at the African History Network, we focus on educating, empowering, and inspiring people of African descent throughout the diaspora and around the world, because right now it's corrects wrong behavior. What you do for yourself, what you do to yourself, and what you allow other people to do to you and get away with, it's based upon what you think about yourself. What you think about yourself is based upon what you've been taught about yourself. What you've been taught about yourself is based upon everything you've read, heard, and seen about yourself. Remember, right now is corrects wrong behavior. It's not over till we win. Wakanda forever. And we'll talk to you next time. Peace. Thanks for watching. All right, guys. Talk to y'all later.